Welcome to another Jellyvision Q&A. This is the CEO of Belly, Logan LaHive, and I've known about Belly for a long time, and I had a chance to meet Logan at an org camp, which is sort of an event that's like an alternative conference. And I thought he was great, and then we got together for a drink that turned into 3 drinks in 3 hours, and he's pretty awesome. Really straight shooter, really honest about life and business, and I hope you'll get some insight from him. So please help me welcome Logan.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's very humbling that you guys decided to show up. I'm sure Amanda required it, but I appreciate you being here.
Awesome. So we're going to do 3 little bits in our brief little Q&A. A little bit about you and your background, a little bit about Belly, and then we'll talk a little bit about the future and what do we think is coming down the pike. Let's start out with you. What's your 30-second bio?
Personal. I'm from the Bay Area. I grew up in California. Came to Chicago with my first startup. I was traveling in the country for a few years and ended up in Chicago. Met a girl much prettier than me, ended up quitting the startup, joined a company called Redbox here in Chicago, was there 4.5 years. After I did that for a while, ended up leaving, starting a company called Belly. We create custom loyalty programs for retail businesses, and now I'm sitting here.
Always very entrepreneurial, even at Redbox, sort of inventing stuff. Is there anything interesting about your parents or upbringing that inspired you to be an entrepreneur? Or is it simply resistance to working for anyone else?
Well, some people say resistance is like the old, you choose to work 80 hours for yourself than 40 for someone else. I don't think mine was really a choice. I don't think I could hold a job if I wanted to. I feel like I get asked this question often, everyone expects you to have some childhood moment, either, one of your parents was some phenomenal entrepreneur, or you had some great business.
Or worked for the man and was broken by the man.
Yeah, something like that. I don't have that. My mom was a teacher. My dad sold auto parts. They weren't entrepreneurial, or I didn't have any kind of the entrepreneurial mentors. I think I actually was asked about this recently. I probably shouldn't say this, but I was asked about this the other night, and it made me think back to my first entrepreneurial venture, which I guess was I did start some things relatively early. This is bad. I'm too far down the path now, though.
Commit.
Commit. I guess I started on being entrepreneurial, I guess, relatively young. My first venture, my next door neighbor, his dad had a collection, a vintage Playboy collection. It was everything from the early '60s, and somehow or another, I was kind of a little shit. I took out the centerfolds of every single one and I sold them at my elementary school for $2 a piece. So that was my first hustle, I guess. That's what I think early in life. I probably had more hustles than entrepreneurial ventures, and I wasn't exactly what you consider the best student. Classic definition, meaning I just wasn't very good at it. Didn't go a lot. So junior year of high school, I took a class that was one of the bullshit electives. It was one of those classes that you figure it won't matter if you cut a lot. But we did this mock portfolio. It was mock investing. And obviously growing up in the Bay Area, this is mid, late 90s, some of the investments I decided to make were tech companies from the Bay Area. So I was investing in Yahoo and some of the, some other ones. I made 2,000% on Yahoo in 6 months. I won the most fake money in the class. And for some reason that kind of got me more connected with what you would consider the Silicon Valley or tech scene in the Bay Area. And I started following that pretty intensely, and that's kind of where I think it was a transition for me. It was less partying and skipping, and class didn't really have as much to do with it.
He's not a partier. He works his butt off. It's just not true to think of him as taking it half-assed. Yeah. Very serious about business.
Yeah, well, I guess. Yes. You burn out early when you start real young, I guess. I started following all of those companies pretty aggressively, and that's when I decided to start going to local community college to take entrepreneurship classes and finding local entrepreneurs to try and volunteer with. Decided I was going to pursue an entrepreneurship degree, which now I feel it's kind of a bullshit major, but it's what I was passionate about. And so that really turned a corner for me, and I started working at startups all through college, got very passionate about it, very into it, and that's when I think everything kind of took a turn, and I was hooked.
So you said you didn't have mentors then. Do you have mentors now?
I'd like to think so, yes. Yes. But, I think some characteristics of, a lot of entrepreneurial people is, you probably have some level of lone wolf, or maybe it's ego, maybe it's stubbornness, whatever it is. I have a lot of people that I very much respect. I have a lot of people that I go to for advice or counsel. But even still, I was an entrepreneurship major. I joined startups right out of school. I was an employee of startups for a long time. I think if I had a real entrepreneurial mentor earlier on, I probably would have started my own company much earlier. It was, I was the kind of guy that was always like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know what my idea is yet. Like, when I have my idea, I'll do it. And I think that's, for me, again, an excuse I hear now. If I hear people making it, it's like idea is 1% of it. It's 99% execution. And so I developed mentors later in life. A guy named Mark Ackler, who I know has been involved here.
He was briefly on Jellyvision's around board of advisors, so we know Mark well.
He was my boss. He's very involved in the Chicago tech community, as a VC and as an entrepreneur. He became my boss after a couple years at Redbox. At Redbox, I started as the most junior employee in the company. I was, marketing coordinator. I'd never done anything in marketing before, but that was the job that was available. And a couple years later, I ended up starting, once the business grew, we started a new business team. So it was basically like an entrepreneurship group, doing anything new. He came in to lead that team, and we worked together for the next 2.5 years. And he's someone that I consider very much a mentor now.
So whether it was Mark or something someone else said or something you read, what's the best advice that you've gotten in the last 10 years?
I actually, it's funny, people always ask you, what's your favorite movie? And it's changes. Some people have one, but it's depends on the moment or what you've seen recently. I've been given a lot of great advice. Advice is like assholes, right? Everyone's got one. So you get advice all the time. But I think that the most memorable for me actually comes from the last page of Spirit magazine. The magazine's in Southwest, So Spirit magazine, they always on the very last page, they always have this couple of questions with a celebrity, and this one was with Steve Martin. And the question was how do you break into the acting business or the comedy business? And he said, be undeniably good. And to me, that quote really resonated, because it doesn't really offer any excuses, right? It doesn't offer any find a mentor, someone's going to help you. It's just be fucking undeniably good, and work hard enough, be good enough at what you're aspiring to do that no one can stop you. I think that to me I consider the best advice, because it gives a level of personal accountability.
And do you feel there's been any particularly bad advice? Anything that you now see in hindsight was just bad advice for an entrepreneur in early days?
Almost everything else. No, again, you get so much advice as an entrepreneur. You go and meet people, and everyone's got an opinion on your business, on your management style, on everything that you do. And I talked about this the other day as well. I feel like even the entrepreneurial community is becoming much more like groupthink and, almost far too collaborative. It's everyone works in these co-office spaces, and everyone works next to each other, and everyone goes to these pitch events and meetups and listens to people all the time. It's sometimes just shut up and just go work. Trust yourself, trust your instinct, your business best. And so, I find that, as an entrepreneur, you have to be very conscious of input. You have to take input as variables all of the time. But ultimately, in order for you to be successful, you have to be very conscious of making your own decisions and trusting your gut, and trusting your impact. You're going to miss a lot, but ultimately, it's about making decisions, having, failing quickly, and having a high batting average on the decisions that you make.
So it's interesting you say that, because Belly is housed with Groupon and Lightbank, your sort of roommates. Is that positive or negative? if you can answer that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I get asked the Groupon question quite a bit just because, we're both in local businesses. They're deals, we do rewards. We're in the same building. We don't have a relationship with them at all. So, Andrew Mason hated me. We didn't get along much. So, when I say like don't have a relationship, I mean like don't have a relationship. So Brad Keywell and Eric Lefkowski, so they're co-founders of Groupon. They are the founders of Lightbank, the venture fund in Chicago. Eric Lefkowski is now the CEO of Groupon, and Brad is on my board. Eric was on my board until he became the CEO of Groupon. So they're very close. Obviously, I work with Brad as a board member all the time, and he has a lot of impact and influence on me. For sure, but just generally, like when you're talking about these guys, like your first investors and very successful local entrepreneurs, they're pretty well known. I think their reputations are pretty well known. Like, they're not easygoing, free spirited kind of guys. Like they're pretty intense. They're the type as well that will be very firm in terms of their recommendations, their advice. They don't make recommendations, right? They make declarations, really. And in our office building at 600 West Chicago, like they've got 3 companies in that building that they co-founded that are now public. They have another one I think sold for like $900 million or something, like in this building. I think companies they've started in that building have like 10,000 employees. So it's hard to say like like I don't believe you, or like I'm not going to listen to you. But ultimately, again, like what they haven't done is built my company. They don't work with our team every day. They don't talk to our merchants every day. And so ultimately, again, like everything is a level of input. It's perspective, it's advice, it's counsel, but you have to own your own path.
So let's talk about the path. How did Belly get started? How did you meet Craig? What's sort of the story of how, of all the companies you could have founded, you founded Belly?
Mm-hmm. So again, anytime people ask the question about like how did you start the company, it's always like it's like the childhood entrepreneurship question. Like you expect some, it's almost like everyone expects some storyline. Like, I was like brushing my teeth and slipped and hit my head on the toilet, and it's like flux capacitor. That's not how Belly happened. So I was at Redbox, and I'd been there over 4 years, and I was working on all sorts of new projects, but I knew that I was going to leave and start my own company. And so it was, for me at that point, it was like, okay, I looking for idea, wasn't really striking. So it was like, let's just put together a pitch. And I put together a pitch for a company that's very close to Belly, but it wasn't exactly Belly. I put together a pitch for it was a startup that had an aspect of like mobile gaming discovery, and you could earn rewards at local businesses, custom rewards at local businesses for achievements in games. And I put together this pitch, and I went out I've been volunteering a lot. I went out in the community, and my first pitch was with a guy named Troy Hennekoff. Troy Hennekoff runs
my mentor. Huge. Yeah. I'm at Jellyvision because of Troy. He's unbelievable.
So Troy, he also, he runs Techstars here in Chicago. He's, founded a number of companies. He's very, very involved. I met him at Big Star. He took a meeting with me at Big Star in Chicago, and he's basically sat down and said, okay, kid, what do you got? Give me your pitch. And I pitched him, and his response was just like, I don't get it. Okay, that sucks. It was first pitch, so I mean, that's fair. He said, well, maybe I don't get it. Maybe other people do. So, the idea obviously involved having to sell to local businesses. He said, I know the owner of that store over there, City Souls. Let's go pitch him. I said, oh, shit. So we literally just got up and like walked across the street to City Souls, and he got the owner, and the owner walked out from the back and stood there and was just like, what do you got? And I pitched him, and that didn't go so well. But so I iterated, and I continued to change it, and I kept meeting other people, kept pitching. I ended up getting connected with Paul Lee at Lightbank, actually through Twitter. We tweeted at one another. He said, come in. I pitched him, and he actually kind of liked it. So he set up time for me to come back the next day and meet with Brad Keywell and Eric Lefkowski. And me following the entrepreneurial community, following the tech community quite a bit, like, I was like, oh my God, these guys are big. So I'm very nervous. So I went in the next day to give them my pitch and sat down across the table from the two of them. And, I don't know, Brad Kuhl, if you ever look up a photo of him, he's got like a shaved head. It's very shiny. Like he doesn't blink at all, like, ever. He's like leaning in, staring at me, just like pitch. And Eric's like pacing the room in the back, and he's obviously, very direct. He just said, I hate it. It's like, okay, that sucks. And then for some reason they started pitching me on some ideas that they had. The two of them, they had all these ideas for different businesses. And my response when they started showing me one of these businesses was, I hate it. And so I think we had like this mutual respect for shitting on one another. And I don't think many people say that kind of stuff to them. So they didn't like my business, but in that meeting they just, after I said that and told them the reasons why I didn't like their business, picking through their wireframes, talking about why the model sucked, like why the pitch wouldn't work, they just said, okay, when can you start? So that day I took a job with them and started 2 weeks later as an entrepreneur in residence at Lightbank. And ultimately, we took the aspects of my plan and aspects of theirs, and I went out, started to sell to businesses, and got rejected a number of times, continued to iterate it, and ultimately came up with the concept for Belly as you see it today. Went, sold it, and worked.
How and when did your co-founder come into the picture?
Craig Olia. So Craig is our co-founder, CTO. He started a company called Where I've Been. Where I've Been was like the largest travel app on Facebook. When Facebook started the app platform, you could put little pins in and say where I've been. Facebook changed some of the parameters of the app platform, and ultimately the business started to tank. We sold the company to TripAdvisor, but Lightbank was his first investor. So when he sold the company to TripAdvisor, he was around the Lightbank offices quite a bit, and he hated working at TripAdvisor, right? It's like entrepreneur working in a big company. So we started to talk, we started to connect, and I told him what I was working on, talked to him about the concept, and we started to work together from basically he did 9 to 5 TripAdvisor, and then we would do like 5 to 2 doing product development, and he was writing code. So he was a co-founder from day one, wrote the first lines of code, but I didn't convince him to join the company full time until about a year later. So.
Interesting. So can you give us a sense of where are you now? How big are you? How many retailers are you in? Employees? Just what's the general sort of landscape on size?
Sure. So we're just over 3 years old. Started the company August 2011 was our first store. We are now in about 8,000 locations across the country in 49 states in Canada. We've fundraised a few times. We've raised about $35 million to date. We have about 115 people, 115 next week, so 115 people or so.
So that you kind of set me up for my next one. That is a lot of growth. I've actually talked to in more detail about the growth. It's unbelievable growth, and it was traction from the get-go. Whereas Jellyvision spent the better part of a decade trying to figure out how to scale, they really, from like month one, were on this trajectory. And I forgive him for making it look easy, because he really is a great guy. But it's got to be quite a ride. At least from the outside, it looks like just this sort of stunning progress. From the inside, what have been the best and worst parts of that kind of trajectory?
Yeah, early on, it was exciting, obviously. We sold our first business. Again, I went out and sold that first business on August 5th, 2011. And, that night we just sat back and sort of watched. We installed the iPad on the counter, a place called Alley Cat Comics in Andersonville. And we sat back and watched, and it was like 20 customers came in and 17 of them signed up for Belly. And it was like, oh, well, shit, we might be onto something. So, sold the next day, and I think we signed up 17 businesses in August, 30 in September, and 60 in October, and 100 in November, and it just, really started to take off from there. And, I think that enabled us to fundraise, pretty quickly, to hire some great people. It enabled us to do a lot of things that, anyone that's spent the better part of the, last decade, like just working towards becoming an entrepreneur, it was in some way it was like all these dreams coming true, but ultimately, like, shit's not easy. Not easy at all. And there's, peaks and valleys all the time. I mean, even during that period of time.
Can't nod more.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. But, we continue to we fundraised. But, ultimately, about 8 months after our launch, we raised a big round of funding from Andreessen Horowitz. We raised about $10 million 8 months after our launch. And, a lot of people, they always say things like, congratulations, like, oh, you raised funding, congratulations. And it's like, people don't understand that when you do that, it's like, oh shit.
It's weight and expectation.
Worse. Yeah, it's like it's so people don't give you money as an entrepreneur as like a congratulations on what you did, right? It's not like, it's not like the VCs are like, hey, sweet job 3 months ago, like here's a check. It's here's money for this very aggressive pitch that you're telling me you're going to do from here on out. And so expectations just continue to get higher. And I think early on, like our growth, our fundraising, some of the press, like all that did was feed into expectations. And those expectations, they are, they're phenomenal. I mean, they do help you in a lot of ways, but they're also very much, a weight, especially on the CEO's shoulders. It's, every sales has to, increase, everything increase faster and faster and faster.
Looking at all my salespeople.
Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Goals always going higher. I mean, there was never a point in time in which it was like, all right, cool, let's be the same this month. And that just continued to get harder and harder. And that meant growing the team very quickly, which we did, and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. A lot of org structure, hiring, goal setting, some product development stuff that, we just made a lot of mistakes. And I think that's the nature of growing quickly. And that caused, a number of different points in time, shit to break or having to take a step back. And, during all those times, you're on the inside and you see all the shit every day. It's like your job is basically like chief putting out fire officer, and you're dealing with all of the shit. But on the outside, everyone sees the growth, everyone sees the expectations, and so ultimately, it's the gap between like expectations and reality is what you're always trying to manage. And I think our rapid growth set expectations very high that have always been exceedingly difficult to meet.
But when you look at it, I think, there's always a slog for everybody and there are always high expectations, yet you're making progress. What are you guys getting right?
Well, I think what we're getting right is, to this day, like I do very little, which is nice. I work a lot, and I always feel busy. But I mean, it's ultimately again, it's the team. Investors say this, people say this all the time. Like I've heard investors give these speeches where it's like we invest on 10 different criteria. It's like 1 through 9 is team, and then 10 is traction. And I believe that to be true. And so ultimately, my job is to get the right people, obviously to give them the tools and the resources they need to be successful, and then get the fuck out of their way. And so, again, I inhibit them quite often, but for us, it's just been getting the right people and trying to give them the tools they need to be successful. I think also, just generally, with us, with Belly, it's not like our concept, our idea was revolutionary. Most great businesses aren't, but it's not like we invented some space that's like, oh my God, how this guy's super smart. How did he think of that? It's a loyalty program, right? I mean, it's like they've been around for a long time. And when I started the company, it wasn't a revolutionary concept either. I mean, there was 30 competitors when I started the company. There's been 60 that have launched since. So again, ultimately, it wasn't the idea. It all came down to the execution. What we could sell, how we could scale the sales, how we could pitch, the product market fit. It's a two-sided network. We have to sell to businesses. They have to sign up customers. So how do we continue to invest in the merchant product while still having a consumer experience? And so ultimately for us, it just came down to a number one core value in our company is hard work. It's what I talk about most. It's what I recruit for most. It's what I value most. And so It came down to a couple of years still of incredibly hard work from some very smart people focusing on minor details of execution.
One of the questions I had for you was, what does top talent look like? What do the rock stars look like at Belly? Because you've hired so many people. What else besides hard work, if anything, comes to mind of the people who really stand out?
Again, not to avoid the question, but hard work is still, for me, the number one criteria. I think there's so many other variables by, different position, by skill set. There's, measures of intelligence or measures of, expertise. There's, how good are they at Excel, or, it's do code tests. There's so many different things that you do, but ultimately there's only one thing that you're very much always in control of, and that's the effort that you put in on a day-to-day basis. And so, it's something that we very much focus on, and I think hard work is not just something that's inherently in people all the time, every day, all day, every day. And so it's the people that have the most passion for what they do, the passion for the problem we're trying to solve. Try to find people that are connected with our vision and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that can help instill that level of passion, enthusiasm, and hard work. Obviously we try and hire smart people, but we're not the type of company that has just the pedigree. We're not recruiting out of Ivy League. We're looking for people that have an expertise in what they do, but primarily hard work, passion, and a desire to learn.
A couple more questions about Belly, and then we'll go to the future and wrap. I recently saw Sean Ellis give a talk, and he's the guy who is credited, at least by himself, for coining the phrase growth hacking. And he put up a chart of growth hacking companies, and they were titans of industry, and Belly was on that slide, the Belly logo. What did you guys do to get on the logo slide of the pioneers of growth hacking?
It's funny. So there's a site like growthhacking.com or growthhacker.com. And they have they do profiles on companies, and they have Uber and Pinterest and Airbnb, and they actually did this big profile on Belly. And they didn't talk to us about it. We didn't interview. No one answered any questions.
But you're geniuses.
Yeah, I
clearly.
read the thing and I was like, oh shit, that was smart. Oh yeah, that makes us sound a lot smarter than we were. A lot of the shit that they wrote about was not things that were us sitting in a room on a whiteboard okay, this is a growth hacking brainstorm. We're gonna come up with this great growth hack and it's totally gonna work. A lot of it was us what you would consider just product market fit, right? Some of it was iterations and A/B testing, and not necessarily things that were some inspired idea, but things that we backed into through multiple iterations. And a lot of it is just I think some level of experience, right? We put iPads in stores and have to deploy to local markets. Redbox is putting kiosks in grocery stores and getting people to sign up. My previous startup was a company called Pay by Touch. We did biometric payment systems, pay with your fingerprint in grocery stores. So, I've got a lot of experience in putting hardware into retail settings, and so, a lot of it is just setting up the right structure, putting the right team in place. In terms of growth hacking, our business, like I said, is B2B2C. And so that's what people typically describe as a two-sided network. And two-sided networks are incredibly difficult to grow, but can be very defensible if you do, if you can scale them. And for us, in a two-sided network, you have typically to have to sort of align yourself towards acquisition or a focus on one of the channels, and have a methodology for the other channel to be able to grow alongside of it. We decided as a company to focus on the merchant. And so we focused on being able to build merchant-facing tools, to build a lot of value into the back end and the CRM and functionality that consumers don't see about Belly. Most consumers think about Belly as a replacement for a punch card, but that's about a tenth of what we do. And we really decided to focus on the merchant value, what we could sell, because they're the ones that pay us. And so if we knew we had to focus on what merchants would buy and what we could sell, that we needed still a way to be able to grow the consumer side of the network. And so a big part of our strategy was, having the customer-facing iPad in store enabled us to sell to merchants and to have essentially a digital billboard in the store that enabled us to have what you consider like what we call a field of dreams marketing. So if you build the network, they will come. We made the product valuable to merchants, so they were incentivized to sign up their customers, and we tried to make it as easy as possible for their customers to sign up. Having physical loyalty cards made it so people that non-mobile or people that didn't want to just download an app in store could take a card, scan it, and register in 8 seconds. And so all of these things, I think, were just cognizant of how we started to build what we considered like a B2B2C business.
Recently, these guys made news for bringing in Fred Lee, who is CTO of Innova, a very large company, and he came in as VP of Engineering, reporting to Craig because he believes so much in Belly. Are there any lessons you can share about bringing in a heavy hitter from the outside into an existing culture?
Fred is definitely, it's a phenomenal, really big hire for us. Like you said, he was the CTO at Innova. I think the company's like $750 million in revenue, and he had 200 people on his team there. And he came to be the VP of engineering with, us with, at the time, 15 engineers. So, that was a huge coup for us. And I think ultimately, we had to sell quite a bit. Recruiting a candidate like that, you have to convince them and sell them a hell of a lot more than they have to sell you. And for us, it was I think obviously about him connecting with the vision. It wasn't necessarily like these are the job requirements, like these are the meetings we need to go to. It was, this is the vision for our company. This is what we're trying to create. This is what we're passionate about building. And there's a couple of aspects to that. One is that I think it was critical in us hiring him that he saw the vision in us, in Craig and I, and we articulated it separately but very similar. And he connected with that. But ultimately as well, when you're articulating that vision with a passion and a plan that, I think just says we can do this as long as we execute well, as long as we do our jobs, that it's going to be a big opportunity. It has the possibility to be a big business. And so, we articulated our vision in the space that we were attacking, which, for us, we consider like the local space. The local space is very much like a winner-take-all or winner-take-most. And so when we talk about what we're trying to accomplish in the category that we are, loyalty and CRM, in the local space, we're able to show him, I think, a plan that said, what we're doing is interesting. He would enjoy coming in and bringing in other people, the ability to recruit other great people to that vision, and that if we did it and did it well, did our jobs well, then the opportunity was pretty big.
So on the positive side, sort of the vision and reputation and star power of Belly can get you to draw talent to you. On the downside, it seems like we heard story after story when we were together over drinks about the challenge of the talent war of people poaching Belly. And are there any stories you can tell us right now about what it's like to try to keep talent at Belly and how competitive the talent war is today?
Yeah, I know which one we talked about this. Such
a good story.
When you talked about some of the downsides of the rapid growth, I think the perception of how much we've grown has gotten out. So and other people have noticed it, and so ultimately we've developed sales process and sales training and things that so I think people look at us and say, oh, these people know how to sell to the local space. Or, from an engineering standpoint, our team has built a strong culture, a blog, and what we believe to be really great, beautiful, quality products. One of the downsides is our team gets incredibly aggressively poached. And being a 3-year-old company, that's still learning a lot of these things, that's not something we were expecting. We weren't expecting, Square to come in and make 2x salary offers to our entire San Francisco sales team. Every major tech company has come after us very aggressively, and that's obviously been something that's kind of new to manage. And I think the story that you're probably talking about, our designer, our chief designer, he's incredibly talented, and he started to get recruited by Facebook. He came to me and came to us and said, I'm getting recruited very heavily from Facebook. They've made me a really generous offer, and they, moved me out to California. And obviously, we said, don't fucking do that. Like, that would be stupid. Like, they're obviously big and their design sucks, and don't do that. And so we're actually able to convince him like not to do that. And so he called back the recruiter and he declined. And he got a call. He got a call like 20 minutes later from someone named Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg's the COO of Facebook. She's a billionaire, might run for president. Like, maybe like top 3 most powerful women in the world. And she called him and said, "Hey, can we talk tonight after work? Like, I want to talk to you more about this." So they literally like scheduled an appointment, and our designer, he's 24. He's and he's like, we hired him. He had a scheduled call that night with Sheryl Sandberg, and he came and told me about it, and I was just like, well, that fucking sucks. Like, how am I going to compete with Sheryl Sandberg? Like, I have no chance to compete with Sheryl Sandberg. And why does she have time to do this?
30 minutes, you guys. 30 minutes.
Yeah,
it was not like a drive-by, like, I'm Sheryl, I care, take the job. It was a 30-minute sales pitch.
Like, be more busy.
From the COO of Facebook.
Like, be more busy. Like, have other things to do. So, obviously, it was kind of like, I think we tried to devise a plan. And so I thought, okay, this super powerful person is going to be recruiting him. I need someone more powerful. So I tried to put in a couple calls, and Obama wouldn't call me back. But I went and created like Obama@bellycard.com, and I drafted this official looking email. I put like the presidential, logo on it, and like, got his signature, and drafted this whole email about, how he's going to be moving back to Chicago and wants to see, Chicago grow and invest in tech community. And so I sent him, Charlie, this email from the president saying, we need you to stay at Belly. And I think he got a good laugh at that. And he stayed.
Yeah. Along those lines, I'm curious, a lot of times people ask, what is it like to have a tech company in Chicago? What's it like to have a tech company in Chicago? You have other offices, but you're headquartered in Chicago, but you are not a homegrown Chicagoan or Midwesterner. Is there any kind of impact of having a headquarters in Chicago? And how, if so, if there's Chicagoness to the headquarters, how does it transfer out to satellite offices?
Well, we don't have any satellite offices. I mean, we have employees in like 20 markets across the country, but
they're all remote.
Yeah, no offices. So Chicago is our only HQ. And like you said, I'm from the Bay Area, so my first startups were there. Like, I'm not like the at the front of the parade. Like, I'm not in the front car of like the Chicago, like, tech is better than the Valley guy. Like, Chicago is very different. But there's nowhere else where I would start Belly. I mean, if I could go back in time and pick any place in the world to start Belly, it would be here. And I think Chicago has just unique characteristics to it that make it great for certain businesses or for certain things. Belly is what I consider like a tech plus company. I mean, we're very much consider ourselves a tech company, tech first. But our business is selling into local businesses and managing all of those accounts, having 8,000 stores and growing those. Quite often we have to sell a lot. We have to, talk to all those businesses. And so, it's a headcount business. And I think the talent pool here from all of the, from all the local schools, I think the work ethic here, I think the loyalty, and just generally like what I would consider a more blue-collar approach, which is certainly how I like to lead business, is unique to Chicago that you wouldn't, I think, be able to replicate in other places. And so it's indisputably been the best place to build Belly. And I just think, in general, when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or starting a tech company in Chicago, I think anyone that says you can't start a certain type of business here or you can't do something outside of the Valley, I think it's just a fucking excuse. Like, you can start a great company anywhere, be undeniably good, but there are characteristics of this market that I think lend itself to certain types of businesses more than others. And Belly and being in the local space, I think, is certainly one of them.
What's next for Belly, and how are you going to get there? From Morgan.
Well, so people ask me what's next, and I think at times they expect to say like we're going to do something totally new or different. I mean, we're not. Not to say we don't strive to improve, but we have what I like to consider like a maniacal focus, and that's words that that I've learned over time from people in this market that I respect. I spent a lot of time with like Chuck Templeton, founder of OpenTable, or Matt Maloney over at Grubhub, and they both.
Dick Costolo of Twitter would say the same thing. Maniacal focus.
Yeah, well, he's busy on that big bag of Doritos, right? Do you see that? Someone gets it. You get it. Yeah. Never mind. The maniacal focus is like we have a core vision, right? So. Belly is not like we're not just like going to the whiteboard every day and saying like, oh, what shit can we try now? Like we should totally do this new thing. Like, oh, this new technology has come out. Let's fire drill and go build it. We are still launching products and building products that were in my very first pitch deck, like before we had our seed funding. Because I believe like our roadmap and our vision is very clear. Like we are trying to help businesses take the in-store experience and bring that more online, helping them create and enhance like their digital relationships to strengthen customer loyalty, to bring customers back more often. And that's our guiding light. Like we don't stray from that. We don't do anything outside of that. And so ultimately for us, we are continuing down that path, and we believe that there's still a huge opportunity for us to continue to iterate on our product to make little things better. There's tons of low-hanging fruit. If you've ever signed up or used Belly, there's a lot of shit we need to make better. And so like we are maniacally focused on making the things that we do today world-class in every aspect, and there's still a lot of room for improvement, and focused on the same roadmap towards that core vision and staying maniacally focused on that. I think generally, though, with our type of business, if you want to be a universal loyalty program, one card app, you can use at all of your favorite places. We're not in all of your favorite places. And so maniacally focused from a vision, from a product standpoint, but our product is better the more places that use Belly, and so growth is key.
So of all the things that can get in a company's way, whether it's competitors or lack of access to talent or capital or economy, what are your greatest challenges?
It's like all of those things, all those external factors, like they do happen. I'm not going to say like, the economy can't have an impact on your business or, the external factors though, in terms of like companies failing or not being successful are rare. The most common factors that impact a business of whether or not they're going to be successful is just like team execution. Like most startups fail either because the founder or the team quits, either literally or figuratively, or you run out of money, and running out of money is just straight up like an execution issue as well. And so for us, again, there's tons of external factors for our business. There's a lot of competitors. One of our smaller but direct competitors raised a big round of funding yesterday. Like, Google has announced things in our space. Apple's announced things in our space. PayPal, even Groupon in our building is now announced. So it's basically like every major tech company in the world is doing shit that's like, like getting closer and closer to us while actively. So it's dangerous. But at the same time, like our vision is clear. We clearly have, product market fit. We're still growing very quickly. And so it all comes down to our ability to execute on that plan. It all comes down to having the right people in the right place with a clear set of goals, knowing what they need to accomplish and what success looks like, and then literally just us getting better every single day. I like to tell my team, like every single day you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And there's days when we've certainly gotten worse. And so, we need to get better vast majority of the time and execute upon our plan. That's about it.
I thought that was great. Logan LaHive from Belly, congratulations on your success, and thank you.